Okay. Thanks, y'all, for hanging with us through this high-energy session. Thank you for keeping stuff short. Our speakers have done a great job. And I'm going to take just a minute to say that this last speaker was part of the inspiration for the theme of our lightning round this year. I mentioned earlier, the theme is achieving conservation wins through storytelling, and y'all have heard some great stories of some big wins that Texas and Central Texas specifically have had. I'd like to zoom over to Dallas so y'all can hear from my friend Alexander, who has made water his full-time job, but he's here today representing his volunteer work as a board member with the Texas Rivers Protection Association. And Alexander is a friend of mine from college. We used to drive glass-bottom boats together, and I'm so excited for y'all to get to know him today. Okay. Since it's on this format, it's going to be a little different. Let me see if I can open it. There you go. All right, big
Awesome.
buttons, the forward.
Thanks. Leah taught me how to drive a glass-bottom boat. That was pretty awesome back in the day. Most of the stories I'm going to talk about today are kind of personal stories. They're not exactly situations where I was working with a particular entity. There's a story at the end that I'll briefly talk about, which I am working on with this organization. But I'm going to be talking about, first of all, bottomland hardwood forests in Texas, and it's something that happened in one of them up in North Texas. So this is a photo in 2020 taken in the largest urban bottomland hardwood forest in the US. It's called the Great Trinity Forest. Had I taken this photo in 1820, there would have been like black bears and ivory-billed woodpeckers. But unfortunately, we've lost more than half of those forests here in the American South since then. So they're one of our more endangered ecosystems here. But luckily, you don't have to go too far to visit this forest. It's up in Dallas, my hometown. This photo was taken during a flood event, and you can see the city of Dallas skyline in the background here. We were paddling over places where typically we are hiking in this forest. This is another more typical scene in the Great Trinity Forest, especially in the summertime when it's shady and the river's low. Last summer, my hiking buddy that you can see standing tall in this photo, activist, author, and photographer Ben Sandifer told me about a big water leak that was happening somewhere in the forest. And he told me about his experience telling the city through complaints for almost a year about this giant leak and how it didn't seem like there was a fix. And so at the end of the summer of 2023, I took my kayak and my phone to go see this big leak, assuming that the leak was big enough for me to boat across and too big for me to walk through. And I was right. This is in the middle of the bottomland hardwood forest. Photo taken from my kayak during drought, a mile from the river. This is really the front row seat to probably what's one of the largest and longest neglected visible drinking water leaks that I've ever heard of. So sitting in the sun, listening to literally the underwater acoustics of pressured fluid flowing through a broken pipe echo through my watercraft, I began to feel a variety of emotions. All of my senses at that point were affected by the leak. I was in a place where I was getting hit by the sun. I could hear running water, the hint of chlorine in the air, and the trees around me, which you can see in the prior photo, were all dead. And this is all during the time in which water entities in North Texas are seeking and are building new reservoir projects in East Texas, some of which are very controversial as they're impacting tens of thousands of acres of some of our last remaining bottomland hardwoods in East Texas. So as a professional who routinely measures stream flow in water and surface water, I got my calculator out. I estimated some distances. I watched some nutria, and I began to interpret my sums and products of what kind of flow I thought was going through here, and I began to get a little more upset about my friend who had been voicing complaints and not having those complaints addressed. So I decided to put my calculations and footage of this leak on US politicians' most dreaded social media app, TikTok. And at the time, my silly account had like a couple followers and some poorly edited videos of wildlife. with songs in the background like Eddie Murphy's 1985 hit Party All the Time and Time Warp by Swedish death metal band Hypocrisy. I dubbed the water leak Dallas's Blue Hole in my video because at the time I had estimated the leak to be about half of the average flow of Jacob's well, which is about 4 cubic feet per second. So I posted the photo and I went to bed, and meanwhile, the poor little Nutria and myself had no idea we were about to be famous for a week. Because when I woke up that morning, the first text I had was actually from a friend of mine who's a reporter, or was a reporter in North Texas. Congrats to Brett Shipp for just finishing his career of Spectrum News. But he texted me and said, "Is this your TikTok?" And I was like, oh crap. Like, I had no idea it was gonna blow up, and it did. But it's bittersweet to say that 3 major television networks and a couple Dallas-based publications, when they shared my TikTok, it resulted in finally the shutting down of this leaking pipe, which was a 72-year-old 30-inch pipe that was eventually completely fixed a month later. But that's how old some of our water infrastructure is in our cities. Infrastructure that was built during President Truman's administration. So over 100 acres of bottomland hardwood were ultimately affected by the leak. And with every tree dead, my friend Ben describes that this area will serve as a tombstone in the forest for decades to come, as it'll be difficult to bring back the forest here. But some quick lessons I learned: if you're able to put hashtags on your social media content, it helps. And if you can put some content that references some kind of meme, a popular meme, it can help you get more interactions and help go viral. In my case, I had that footage of a nutria, and half the comments on this TikTok were people saying, "We have capybaras in Texas," and they couldn't stop talking about the capybaras. So unfortunately, this isn't the first time I've used some footage to invoke some influence on a regulated entity to stop some kind of environmental crime, essentially. Sometimes that camera is a satellite up in space. This is also in the Great Trinity Forest, where I've seen illegal land use activities, unpermitted activities to the floodplain. And when I reported these to people, it eventually did spur environmental investigations and some raids at this property. But once these entities get their permit for the work they're doing, they can usually continue. I had a favorite satellite bust, I guess you could call it, that happened at Fairfield Lake State Park last summer during when we lost this park and the state was seeking to do eminent domain here. I can tell you more about some really funny things that happened in a complaint report by the TCEQ regarding the self-proclaimed conservationist there. But I have to wrap up. I'm way over my time, and I'm sorry. There is a group that my group, the Texas Rivers Protection Association, that I volunteer for, has been helping out in East Texas. This is a group of hunters and fishermen that have had their local park that they've been mending in a place where their families and the generations of people that live here near the town of Trinidad, Texas, have been hunting and fishing at for probably over 100 years. But there's a landowner next door that has put up an illegal fence on a public right-of-way. And I don't want these fences to come to the hill country and start blocking access out here. So please follow our work and check out my friends at Save the Cutoff. They are bringing this action to court, and hopefully it gets wrapped up soon. Thank you. It's an honor to share this stage with everyone.